In the last lecture, we got started with implementing our first UI test. And if you look at our environment values, you can see that we're using the APR service or we're creating the APR service. And what we end up doing is we're passing in the mock credit score service. Now, this basically means that even if we're running it in a production environment, we will always have the mock credit score service. So how can we make sure that this part, mock credit score service, sometimes it's mock credit score service, but sometimes it's the actual production service. So one of the things we can do in our UI test is pass launch arguments. And over here, I can pass any arguments I want. I'm just going to go ahead and pass in UI test. Now, this is just, I'm defining this UI test. It's not like a keyword or configuration that already exists, but basically I'm passing this string as a launch argument. And in my actual application, I should be able to access this. So this means that when our UI test is running, this is a launch argument is going to be passing. And when we receive this launch argument in our actual application, then we can create a mocked version of it instead of creating the real one. So I'll go to my factories. You can see that we have an enum credit score service factory. The reason I'm calling it factory is that because the purpose of credit score service factory is to create the credit score service. And we can actually have different cases over here like testing, production, or so on. And over here, we can go ahead and create a current property. This is going to return us the factory itself. And in order to access the launch argument, we can try to look into the process info. So process info.arguments.contains and contains what? Well, contains this UI test. If it does contain that UI test, then we'll return testing or else we'll return production. And we can also create another property over here like service, which is going to be returning the credit service protocol. Based on testing, it will return the mock credit score service. But if it is production, then we will return the real deal, the real thing. Okay? So now the question is, how do we use the credit score service? So if we open up our environment values, we need to change this part. Instead of calling it mock credit score service, over here we can use credit score service factory .current.service. So this is going to allow us to inject the right one based on that condition of UI test. All right. And this is really good because when we are running our UI test, we will not be invoking the real service. We will be invoking the mocked credit score service. And one of the ways that you can actually just find out is if we go, you can put some, print statements over here if you want to, but if we are going to invoke the get credit score, I can just add a print statement over here and say get credit score. Maybe we'll be able to see that this particular thing is getting fired. And now if I go back and run our test again, we'll see that if the mocked version, the mock credit score service is getting called instead of the real one. All right, because this is a UI test. This is not an end-to-end test. So right now it's just working. It's just trying to launch something. Let me see actually which one is it using. So we have a couple of different simulators running over here. Okay, there we go. Okay, and if we look at this code, I wonder if we can actually find out. Maybe we'll have to put like a breakpoint or something. Sometimes you just have to put a breakpoint. So if I go over here and put like a breakpoint over here, maybe it will stop over here. But let's go ahead and run it again. Okay. There we go. See that? And we're inside the mock credit score service and it's firing this. So this means that since we're running our UI test, it is actually calling the mock credit score service. Okay? And the test is passing. Great. Now we can also update our test. Right now, the test is checking for a couple of things. It's asserting that the APR text label exists. It's also asserting that the label will not be empty, but we can also kind of assert, I mean, this is the correct social security number, so I think we're expecting a range from 1 to 3 or something like that. Like we can always look over here, see that? So this is just a credit score service, but we are expecting a range between like 1 and 3. Okay, so we can also do that, like, okay, if it's in the range or not, or if it's something is being displayed, if it's like, this is also going to be okay because we are, like the range can change, right? But if the range can change and if we're checking for a particular range, then the test will start failing, even though the correct amount will be displayed on the screen. So over here, I'm just going to check that if it's empty or not. Now, some might say this is not enough, but I think for our case, it's such a dynamic thing that it changes. The range for the APR will change. It fluctuates so much that if we hard code a particular range, then it will definitely fail our UI test, even though it is being displayed on the UI. Okay. So this is our first UI test that we are writing, and we implemented the credit score service factory, which allows us to switch between a testing versus production environment. And the switch is for when we're doing testing, we return a mock credit service. When we're doing production, we return a credit score service. Okay. So in the next lecture, we'll be looking at some different UI tests we can write.